In our headlines on this Thursday, November 21st, here in South Korea. Ukrainian forces launched British Storm Shadow missiles for the first time on Wednesday at targets within Russia's Kursk region, where North Korean troops have been deployed for duty. Meanwhile, over in New York, a UN General Assembly committee adopts a resolution condemning North Korea's human rights violations and calling for the return of all abductees for the 20th year in a row. And the US vetoes a Gaza ceasefire resolution drafted within the UN Security Council, claiming the ceasefire is not based on the condition of the release of hostages abducted by Hamas during the October 7th assault. Just a day after launching US-made longer-range missiles into Russian territory, Ukraine on Wednesday fired UK-supplied long-range missiles into the Kursk region. Our Park Gonu starts us off.
Ukraine has used UK-supplied long-range missiles for the first time in its war against Russia. According to Reuters, an official speaking on condition of anonymity confirmed that British Storm Shadow cruise missiles with a range of 250 kilometers were launched on Wednesday against targets in Russia. Fragments of the missiles were reportedly found in the Kursk region, where North Korean troops are deployed. The attack comes a day after Ukraine fired U.S. ATACMS missiles for the first time into Russian territory, after their use was approved by U.S. President Joe Biden this week. The British government declined to comment about the use of its long-range missiles, but according to the BBC, the UK's Defense Secretary had been in contact with officials in Ukraine on Tuesday night. The UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer had hinted at support for Ukraine during the recent G20 summit in Brazil.
We have stood with Ukraine from the start, and I've been doubling down in my clear message that we need to ensure that Ukraine has what is needed for as long as is needed to win this war against Putin.
Also on Wednesday, the U.S. said it would support Ukraine with anti-personnel landmines in a reversal of its current policy. The decision was followed by backlash from humanitarian organizations over concerns about the threat such weapons pose to civilians. However, the U.S. State Department said the landmines are comparatively safe as they become inert after a period of time. Also on Wednesday, countries including the U.S. temporarily shut their embassies in Kyiv amid the threat of Russian attacks inside Ukraine.
Saw the security alert that went out early this morning, overnight our time. The embassy put that alert out based on a possible threat of a significant attack on Kyiv, something that we take very seriously and led to the temporary change in posture at the embassy.
But the U.S. officials said their embassy will return to normal operations on Thursday. Park Gonu, Arirang News.
And authorities here have confirmed that North Korean hackers were behind the 2019 theft of 58 billion Korean won worth of cryptocurrency from a South Korean trading platform. Our Kim Jong-sil has details.
South Korean police have for the first time officially pointed at North Korea as the culprit of a 2019 cryptocurrency heist. In November 2019, North Korean hackers stole 342,000 Ethereum worth 58 billion won at the time from the South Korean exchange Upbit. Today, that value is estimated at over 1.49 trillion won, or just over $1 billion. According to the Korean National Police Agency on Thursday, investigators identified two North Korean hacker groups, Lazarus and Andariel, as responsible for the breach. The conclusion comes from evidence gathered through IP addresses, cryptocurrency tracking, and cooperation with the FBI. Police also uncovered traces of the North Korean phrase "허란일," meaning unimportant matter, on a computer used in the attack. Police stated that 57% of the stolen Ethereum was exchanged for Bitcoin through 3 exchange sites, while the rest was laundered through 51 foreign exchanges. Although the exact use of the funds remains unclear, it is suspected that they may have gone to fund North Korea's nuclear or missile programs, as previously reported by the UN and foreign governments. After 4 years of legal and diplomatic efforts, South Korea, in collaboration with Swiss authorities, reclaimed 4.8 Bitcoin valued at 600 million won, which was returned to Upbit last month. The authorities continue to work on recovering the remaining stolen assets and strengthening efforts to prevent future cybercrime. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, a UN General Assembly committee has adopted a resolution denouncing North Korea's human rights violations and demanding the return of all abductees for the 20th year in a row. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Peunji reports.
The United Nations Third Committee, which handles human rights and social affairs, has adopted a resolution on North Korean human rights. It was adopted by consensus by 61 countries, including South Korea, at a meeting in New York on Wednesday local time. The committee has been adopting the resolution on the human rights situation in North Korea every year since 2005. This year's resolution not only contains a united message from the international community urging the overall improvement of human rights in North Korea, but also includes concerns about new areas that were not part of previous resolutions. First, it expressed concerns about the possible negative impact the human rights situation could have on separated families, noting that North Korea announced earlier in January that it would no longer pursue reunification with the South. And second, the paper also urged the North to ensure the right to freedom of thought and religion, and the right to freedom of opinion and expression, by reforming all practices and laws that suppress these rights. It also called on the regime to permit the establishment of independent newspapers and other media. South Korea's Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations said during Wednesday's meeting that it's already well known the North provides zero freedom of expression and severe punishment for merely watching South Korean dramas.
It is with a heavy heart, however, that there has been no improvement, but rather deterioration in North Korea's systematic, widespread, and gross human rights violations, which amount to crimes against humanity.
South Korea's foreign ministry said in a statement that it welcomes the committee's adoption of the resolution and said it hopes discussions on the human rights situation in North Korea will continue to take place actively at the United Nations. Peunji, Arirang News.
Unification Minister Kim Yong-ho condemned North Korea's acts of aggression in written remarks to the Global Korea Forum in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, local time. He took issue with the regime's deployment of, quote, its youth to the unjust war in Ukraine and its most recent ballistic missile launches. Minister Kim also took the opportunity to reaffirm South Korea's commitment to its alliance with the U.S., emphasizing its strength regardless of shifts in U.S. leadership. The Global Korea Forum is an annual event organized by the Ministry of Unification to rally global support for unification on the Korean Peninsula. The U.S. has vetoed a resolution drafted within the UN Security Council for a halt in violence in Gaza, claiming the resolution fails to effectively relay the condition of hostage release and to denounce Hamas for its October 7th assault against Israel. Our Ising-jae reports.
A UN Security Council draft resolution was put forward by 10 non-permanent members on Wednesday, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. For a resolution to be adopted, it must receive at least 9 votes in favor, with no vetoes by any of the UNSC permanent members. However, despite receiving 14 votes in favor of the draft resolution, it failed to pass due to 1 veto from a permanent member, the United States. According to the U.S. envoy to the UN, the veto comes as it was believed the draft resolution would not have secured the release of hostages.
We made clear throughout negotiations we could not support an unconditional ceasefire that failed to release the hostages. Because, as this Council has previously called for, a durable end to the war must come with the release of the hostages. These 2 urgent goals are inextricably linked. This resolution abandoned that necessity, and for that reason, the United States could not support it.
The veto was still met with major backlash despite the explanation from the U.S. ambassador to the UN. The draft resolution does demand the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. However, the U.S. felt the language was not strong enough, adding that the ceasefire was not on the condition of the release of hostages. Wood also added that the draft failed to condemn Hamas for the October 7th terrorist attack. Meanwhile, after visiting Beirut, U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein is headed to Israel to continue negotiations on an Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire. He's expected to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday, as the Lebanese government and Hezbollah accepted a U.S.-led draft proposal. However, details of the ceasefire proposal are still unclear, and it remains to be seen whether Israel would also agree to the agreement after Hochstein's visit. 이승재, Arirang News.
Back on the local front, President Yoon is back home, having touched down here in Seoul earlier on this Thursday morning from his trip to South America. That being said, our Oh Soo-young sheds light on the gains of his latest diplomatic agenda. To take a listen.
President Yoon's week-long trip to Latin America featured South Korea's multidimensional diplomacy as he reinforced bilateral and minilateral partnerships to tackle global challenges. Coming at a significant time in geopolitics, with former US President Donald Trump set to return to the White House in January, as well as Russia and North Korea's military cooperation, all eyes were on Yoon's key bilateral summits on the sidelines of the APEC summit in Peru. Amid concerns that a second Trump term could undermine America's network of alliances, the South Korean leader held a trilateral and separate bilateral meetings with US President Joe Biden and Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. To preserve Seoul, Washington and Tokyo's three-way partnership on deterring North Korea and tackling challenges to regional peace and prosperity, the leaders agreed to launch a trilateral secretariat to institutionalize their agreements made at Camp David last year. The South Korean leader also held a rare sit-down with Chinese President Xi Jinping for the first time in 2 years, signalling progress in their relations. Yoon called on Beijing to play a constructive role in squeezing North Korea as the regime's nuclear and missile threat continues to grow. Still, with tensions expected to rise between Washington and Beijing, Yoon made it clear that choosing between its closest ally and biggest trading partner is a false dilemma. He told Brazilian media that while Seoul will anchor its foreign policy on the Korea-US alliance, it aims for communication and a constructive partnership with China. Another key outcome of Yoon's trip to Lima was his bilateral summit with Peruvian President Dina Boluarte as he marked his first official trip to a Latin American country. The two sides inked deals on strengthening cooperation on defense, minerals, infrastructure and ICT as comprehensive strategic partners. Yoon also met with the leaders of Brunei and Vietnam for the first time and the Canadian Prime Minister for their sixth summit. During the G20 summit in Brazil, Yoon also held a minilateral meeting with the leaders of MICTA, Mexico, Indonesia, Korea, Turkey and Australia, reaffirming their support for principles of international law, multilateralism and international cooperation amid growing conflicts in the world. Finally, Yoon's multilateral diplomacy aimed to enhance South Korea's role as a global pivotal state, contributing to global growth and governance, leveraging its experience of turning from a war-torn country into an advanced IT powerhouse.
The central themes of the APEC and G20 meetings were promoting inclusivity and growth and building a just world and sustainable planet, both addressing humanity's sustainable future, a goal attainable only through shared growth between advanced and developing economies.
Yoon highlighted Seoul's role as a bridge of prosperity and a green ladder linking developing and advanced economies by sharing its IT solutions for social inclusion, contributions to beat poverty and hunger, and efforts to promote an inclusive green transition. Wrapping up his multilateral summitry, President Yoon assured that South Korea will uphold its commitments and responsibilities, especially as its southern city of Gyeongju hosts the APEC summit next year. He introduced the summit's theme of building a sustainable tomorrow, connect, innovate, prosper. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Rio de Janeiro.
Exports during the first 20 days of November expanded on year, bolstered by strong shipments of semiconductors and ships. According to the Korea Customs Service on this Thursday, the total value of exports rose nearly 6% on year, surpassing $35.6 billion. Now, given this latest finding, the government believes Korea will see its surplus stretching to 14 straight months in November as exports continue to grow. SK Hynix is poised to become the world's first supplier of NAND flash memory chips with over 300 layers. According to the chipmaker on this Thursday, mass production is underway, and these chips will be available to customers in the first half of next year. This breakthrough follows the company's technological advances in stacking memory cells vertically to raise storage capacity. Now, back in June last year, SK Hynix succeeded in creating the world's highest 238-layer NAND. NAND flash is a type of memory chip that stores data even when the power supply is turned off. Hyundai Motors unveiled its new electric SUV, the Ioniq 9. The event took place in Los Angeles on Wednesday. Building on the success of its Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 6, Hyundai believes the Ioniq 9 redefines the electric vehicle experience with its spacious interior. The vehicle also marks the Korean auto giant's entry into the large electric SUV market. The Ioniq 9 will be on display for the general public on Friday at the 2024 LA Auto Show. Then it will be available in the market, first here in Korea from early next year, before hitting markets in the US, Europe, and beyond. A growing number of companies is seeking to offer family-friendly support to better address the country's alarming birth rate. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin covers the broad campaign.
I think all working moms can agree that one of the toughest situations is having to go to work even when your child suddenly falls ill.
It's a struggle that working parents across the world grapple with. And it often deters people from starting a family, which is why firms like this bank have built daycare centers for their employees as part of efforts to improve the work-life balance for working parents. Lee Hyun drops off her 3-year-old son at the daycare each day at around 8 a.m. and picks him up after work. And because it's a corporate daycare center, she's not the only parent who does so.
At other daycare centers, most children get picked up by 4 p.m., so I would worry about my son being there alone, but now knowing there are many other children, I worry less and can focus better on my work.
The centers also have programs using educational puzzles and games to teach children social skills and basic concepts in language and math. They also plan to hold open houses after work hours and during weekends to give parents insight into their children's progress. And such daycare centers will soon be open to other working parents.
Starting March next year, employees from small and medium-sized companies will also be able to send their children here.
This just adds to efforts already undertaken by SMEs as this makeup company introduced flexible working hours for its employees in January 2022. Managed entirely online, the system allows employees to choose their daily work hours as long as they complete the required monthly schedule of around 177 hours.
These days, pediatric clinics are so crowded that you have to start queuing as early as 5 a.m. But because I was able to adjust my work hours, I was able to take my child to the hospital.
Kim Sol-mi, whose son is 23 months old, says that this has enhanced her work-life balance.
The hardest part is being at work when your kid is at home sick, because you just worry about them. But having control over my work hours has been a huge help.
The company says the number of births and marriages has tripled since they first implemented the flexible working hour system, showing how policy supporting a good work-life balance for working moms like Lee and Kim can help Korea address its low birth rate. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Incheon City is hosting an impressive art show over the next 4 days, starting today, with some 6,000 works from here and abroad on display. Our Han Da-eun gives us a glimpse.
A stunning collection of art featuring standout pieces from over 130 galleries across Korea. Art enthusiasts delve into the details of each work, while others are inspired to try their hand at painting. The Incheon Art Show 2024 kicked off on Thursday for a 4-day run in Songdo, showcasing some 6,000 captivating artworks, both from Korea and around the world. Now in its 4th year, the show has attracted more than 50,000 visitors and generated over $5 million in sales, solidifying its position as Incheon's premier art exhibition. This year, visitors can enjoy an impressive range of works, from the iconic pieces of Pablo Picasso and Takashi Murakami to David Hockney.
The Incheon Art Show aims to go beyond just viewing and appreciating art, striving to create a virtuous cycle where audiences also engage in purchasing artworks. This shift is intended to position Incheon as a pivotal player in the global art market.
Incheon Mayor Yoo Jung-bok says the art show is a key component of the city's broader efforts to expand its cultural and artistic infrastructure.
Enhancing Incheon's cultural competitiveness is not only key to improving citizen happiness, but also acts as a crucial indicator of the city's broader competitiveness. I am committed to advancing Incheon's cultural sector through a range of dedicated initiatives.
Under the tagline, Beyond Asia, Connect Global, the Incheon Art Show promises a unique experience that blends diverse art perspectives, offering a rich showcase of both renowned artists and emerging talents. Hopes are high that it'll play a significant role in fostering the port city's cultural growth and turn Incheon into a vibrant hub for the arts on the global stage. 한다은, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. Violence has escalated in the Haitian capital, Port-au-Prince, with the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner saying Wednesday that at least 150 people were killed and some 100 injured in the past week alone. Difficult conditions continue in Haiti, with some 80% of the Haitian capital still controlled by well-armed gangs, where civilians are routinely being targeted. Around 20,000 people have also been forced to flee their homes since a coalition of gangs began pushing for total control of the country's capital on November 11th. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk expressed grave concern, saying that some 4 million residents of Port-au-Prince are practically being held hostage by an alliance of Haitian gangs controlling all the main roads in and out of the capital. While a Kenya-led international force has been deployed in Haiti to support Haitian military and police, the UN Human Rights Office estimates some 700,000 people are now displaced across the country. It also said that up to Wednesday, 4,544 deaths had been caused by gang violence, with another 2,060 people injured. A powerful storm known as a bomb cycle slammed the northwest United States and parts of Canada on Tuesday night to early Wednesday, leaving some 650,000 without power and at least 2 people dead. Schools in western parts of Washington state have temporarily cancelled classes as falling trees killed at least 2 people in the state overnight. A bomb cyclone occurs when a storm rapidly intensifies over a short period of time due to a rapid fall in central air pressure. Gusts of up to 124 kilometers per hour were recorded in Washington state, while the coast of British Columbia saw winds of up to 163 kilometers per hour. In Washington state, over 650,000 homes or businesses lost power by Wednesday morning, while 140,000 were cut off in British Columbia, and more than 24,000 were left without power in California. The cyclone is predicted to move towards northern California, with strong winds and heavy rains expected to continue through to Friday in the affected regions. India continues to see hazardous levels of air pollution, leading the capital's environment minister to order half of its government workers to work from home on Wednesday. According to IQ Air data on Wednesday morning, New Delhi ranked as the world's most polluted city with a very unhealthy level of 227 on the Air Quality Index. Now, Delhi Environment Minister Gopal Rai said that 50% of the Delhi government staff will be working from home, with the exception of those working in departments providing essential services. All schools in Delhi have also been temporarily shut down to prevent pollution-related illnesses, while Stage 4 pollution curbs have been imposed banning operation of trucks and vehicles. A woman has been charged with hate crime in the US after a video recording an altercation at a cafe in Illinois went viral. 64-year-old Alexandra Shostakevich has been charged with 2 counts of hate crime, which are a Class 4 felony, and a single count of misdemeanor disorderly conduct after she was seen in an altercation with a Palestinian man and his pregnant wife, attempting to pour a drink on the man and raising a hand to assault the victim. Now, police said that Shostakevich confronted the man before his wife began recording the encounter. Illinois Downers Grove Chief of Police Michael DeVries said that the assailants' behavior is not and will never be tolerated in our community. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Even though mild conditions stayed throughout the day, ultrafine dust appeared again. Due to stagnant atmospheric conditions, the concentration of ultrafine dust was in the bad category in the Seoul metropolitan area, Chungcheongbuk-do province, and Gwangju. From tonight, it will expand to the southern inland areas and continue until tomorrow morning. Tomorrow, the late autumn weather will continue under clear skies. Mild temperatures of 10 degrees Celsius will prevail for the daytime in Seoul. However, morning temperatures will stay at single figures all over the country, so do expect temperature gaps. Tomorrow morning, Chuncheon will start off at 1 degree, Daejeon 4 degrees. Highs in Daejeon and Gwangju will move up to 12 degrees, Daegu and Gyeongju 13 degrees. After rain across the country early next week, daytime temperatures will drop dramatically. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Thank you for watching.
How to survive in Korea. Weddings. Step 0. Attire. As a guest, dress formal to business casual. Avoid wearing all white, shorts or going topless. Step 1. Arrival time. Arrive 30 minutes prior to the wedding ceremony. Too many cars, too many halls, too many people. There are many twists and turns. Take pictures and shake hands. And write your name vertically, not horizontally, in the guest book. Step 2. Or, shib, shibor. 50,000 won, 100,000 won, 150,000 won. Cash gifts are given in these units. Decide on the amount based on your relationship. Write your name vertically on the envelope. Step 3. Wedding etiquette. Fill up the front row. Guests have 3 duties to fulfill: clapping, cheering, and taking pictures. Step 4. Dining. Take off your jacket. This will be your seat from now on. Start with the not your everyday delicacies. Galbijjim. Yes. Bosa. Yes. Chili shrimps. Definitely yes. Kimbap. Yeah. Only if you can't live without it. No need to pile up food. You have more than one opportunity. Did you survive the wedding? Wait, did someone catch your eye? What are you waiting for? You're looking fine today.
K-drama, the charm of Korea that captivates the world. Love like a K-drama. A story of us where hope and despair coexist. Fun and refreshingly satisfying. K-dramas carry warmth and move people's hearts. Meet the fascinating stories of Korea through K-dramas.
The ripple effects of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's trade policy are being felt even before his actual return to the White House. And for South Korea, the impact has been far from pleasant, with its currency weakening against the U.S. dollar and its stock market losing much ground. We have more press perspective today. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Thursday, November 21st here in South Korea. I'm Min Sun-hee. Anxiety was the word used by one scholar on our show this week to describe the atmosphere within multilateral economic frameworks as they await the return of the Trump administration in the U.S. next year. For more on the broader economic implications of former President Donald Trump's return, I have Sam Kim, a journalist for Bloomberg, here in the studio. Sam, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Pleasure.
I also have Professor Yang Hee-dong at Ewha Women's University live on the line. Professor Yang, welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
Right, Sam, we'll start here in the studio. The Associated Press says Mr. Trump's pick for Treasury Secretary will provide onlookers with a better understanding of his tariff plans. That being said, who are the contenders as we speak and what do they indicate?
Well, as far as I understand, there are a few names being floated right now, including Apollo CEO Mark Rowan, Senator Bill Hagerty, Key Square founder Scott Bessent. Whoever becomes the pick ultimately, which we're going to be hearing in a day or two possibly, is likely to be what I would describe as the face of Trump's economic agenda, meaning that he or she is going to lead the discussions within the government, also discussions with the parliament there on important topics like debt issuances, because the U.S. is almost annually constantly worried about the debt ceiling. There's so much debt that has been printed, and the ceiling has to be lifted every year. And that person is going to lead the government efforts on that. And obviously, some of the other Trump agenda, including tariffs, are going to be, basically on the shoulder of that person. So I would see this as the face of Trump's connection with Wall Street, investors, businesses, just total package, basically. So it's going to be quite important.
All right, and speaking of Wall Street, veteran Wall Street corporate leader and billionaire investor Howard Lutnick has been tapped as Commerce Secretary. What can we expect in terms of trade?
Well, certainly we've been hearing a lot during the campaign about these universal tariffs of 10% against all trading partners, and in particular 60%, which is a pretty whopping number, against China in particular. That has to do with the fact that Donald Trump does not really like the fact that there's a lot of trade deficits against these countries. China and Mexico are the top two nations with the biggest trade surpluses against the U.S. And South Korea happens to be, I think last time I checked, it was the 8th on the list. So it's not huge, but it's not small either. So what I think we could expect from the new Commerce Secretary would be his kind of leading the tariff agenda and basically being at the front of the negotiations with these trading partners to make sure that they're going to they're going to be able to impose all these tariffs. And then part of the agenda would be bringing more jobs to the U.S. via more what they call reshoring, meaning that a lot of companies abroad would be asked to set up their factories in the U.S. to promote jobs. So that could be part of the agenda we can expect.
Right. Professor Young, broadly speaking, based on what has been shared thus far, what do you believe are perhaps some of the major differences in economic policy between Mr. Trump's past and future administrations?
Well, I don't see any big differences between the Trump, the first and second period, because the economic policies of the Trump government about in the year 2016 were characterized the two major features. The first one is he tried to enhance the market orientation. So he tried to reduce the corporate tax from 35% to 21%. And also, he was one of the very rare the president who tried to lower the government regulations. The major purpose for this, the market rent deregulation, is to repatriate all the overseas investment. So, for example, in the year 2018, 3/4 of the overseas investments were repatriated back to the United States. That led to more employment of the workforce in the United States. So everyone was really happy during the first period of Donald Trump government, the tenure. But the only difference, the major negative effect of his government, the economic policy in his first period was he applied, you already know, they applied some very high tariffs. Was like 20% for steel, 10% for aluminum, etc. That led to increase of the imported goods that also damaged the local price, the indexes. So his economic policies had the pros and cons in terms of living conditions for the local people. Almost same in the second period. He declared as the right now. He declared to apply, 10% of the universal tax on all the imported goods, and 60% for the Chinese products. And he also tried to cancel all of the Biden's the policy about the green economies. But the only difference between first and second period is his international politics. United States is very, very famous for the U.S. isolationism. But now he has two wars to deal with. One in Israel, the other one in Ukraine. So he had no choice but to get involved with the leaders of those two countries. So somehow he needs to get involved with the international talks that may, cause some trade-off between those two countries in terms of economic effort. And besides, he wants to keep the interest rate lower because everyone in the United States pushes to lower interest rate. But, if he reduces the corporate tax, then he needs to compensate for the loss of government income by issuing more government bonds that may lead to increase of national interests. So, all these issues really, cause more challenges for the economic policies of the Trump government.
Right, and speaking about challenges, Sam, Bloomberg recently conducted a survey of economists who forecast a drop in South Korea's economic growth amid Mr. Trump's return to the White House. Could you tell us a bit more about that particular survey?
Yeah, I was actually surprised to find out from our team that does these economic surveys that survey was done before Trump's election, meaning that the economists were already becoming much less optimistic about Korea's economy even before Trump won the election by a landslide. Now, the IMF had its Korea mission chief visiting Korea earlier this week, and there was a press briefing yesterday where he said Korean economy would grow, as far as if I remember correctly, 2.2% this year and 2% next year, which happens to be in line with our own estimates. Now, you might say that's not too bad, 2% growth, but that's still a revision down by, I think, 0.23 percentage points, which is a sizable drop in my view. And that has to do with the fact that the export rally that we've been seeing in Korea for the past year is starting to soften. I just wrote, as I was coming from the office, an article about South Korea's 20-day trade data showing that semiconductor exports are okay. Shipbuilders are doing okay too, but exports of wireless communication devices, meaning smartphones, automobiles, these things are falling compared to a year earlier. So we're seeing the softening, and the economic growth is likely to soften as well.
Right, and speaking about falling, Sam, the local bourse itself has lost substantial ground amid news of Mr. Trump's election. What is the state of the Korean stock market as we speak?
It's really a perfect storm right now. It's happening because, as I earlier told you, the export rally is softening, and there's a lot of questions about how long the momentum in chip exports is going to last as well. So there's growing pessimism about chip companies, including Samsung, which happens to account for about, as far as I understand, 30% of the entire Kospi main index, right? And then you have the Trump trades, meaning that a lot of money or a lot of investors want to go to the U.S. expecting there's going to be all these Trump policies that are conducive to bringing more money back onto the U.S. soil. So they are betting that the local currencies are going to continue to weaken, meaning they're selling Korean stocks to take that money to the U.S., and that's just creates what I would call a perfect storm.
Right. Professor Yang, why does the Korean stock market appear to be so highly vulnerable to Mr. Trump's return?
As I already mentioned, Donald Trump wants to compensate for the loss of government income through the reduction of corporate tax by issuing more national bonds that leads to increase of the market interests. If the market interest increase in the United States, less of the overseas fund or the liquid money will flow back to the United States. So that means, all the overseas foreign investments on Korean stock market will sell out the Korean stocks and move their funds back to the United States. So that's why we had some, Korean stock market index deployed somehow in the recent days. What is a more serious problem with the Korean stock market is about new economic policy of the Donald Trump government. For example, he seems to cancel all the subsidy policies for semiconductor industry. Samsung, for example, electronics had invested over $60 billion in the United States until the year 2030. And the President Biden promised to provide the subsidies up to about $7 billion back to Samsung. If Donald Trump canceled the subsidy plan, I mean, all the investment, particularly the Korean semiconductor company, will become the victim of the changes of the economic policies triggered by Donald Trump. But we have a very positive effects as well. For example, the first one is the shipbuilding. Donald Trump made a call to President Yoon to enhance the cooperation between the American and Korean military, the corporations, because it's really urgent for American Navy Army's forces to enhance their remanufacturing or rebuilding their ship forces. And so that's why we had increase of stock prices of Hanwha Ocean, HD, Hyundai Heavy Industries, and etc. And another beneficiary from its policy is defense militaries in the United States and Korea. So these are two major the beneficiaries from the Donald Trump. But we also have some victims, the very promising victims from the Donald Trump. The first one is, as I said, the automobiles, the Hyundai Motors. They're all the exports. Almost half of the export are focused on the United States. If the United States try to, charge the taxes, all the import goods, like 10%, 20%, I mean, Hyundai Motors had to increase, their retail prices that may lead to reduction over their sales in the United States. Besides, Hyundai Motors is ranked number 2 in the electric the vehicle market in the United States. And if the subsidy reduced for the vehicle in the United States, Hyundai Motors also became the victim of this one. And another victim is battery industry. So, I mean, there are pros and cons from the economic policies of Donald Trump.
Right. So while cars and batteries are victims, as Professor Yang was saying, the shipbuilding industry as well as the defense industry are looking to benefit from Mr. Trump's policies. Another platform that is benefiting is the cryptocurrency markets. It's been flourishing in recent days. How do you explain this phenomenon? What are your prospects for the future with regard to the cryptocurrency trading market?
I'm certainly not, someone who is proficient in that area to be able to comment on the prospect of it, but the rally has certainly been quite a phenomenon, mind-blowing, I would say. And I would have to tie that to Trump trades again. Mr. Trump basically pledged during the campaign that he would make the U.S. the Bitcoin capital of the world, and that the U.S. government would build a strategic reserve of Bitcoin. Now, there are not many details that have been divulged about how he plans to implement that, but there's a lot of expectation that there's going to be demand for Bitcoin throughout the world. And that's one way for, I think, a lot of investors outside the U.S. to be kind of putting their money where their local currency isn't. So there's a way of buying dollars, but if that's not so available, I guess a lot of investors could still turn to Bitcoin. And I think that's pretty much what's happening. But I certainly am not an expert on this, so don't bet on it.
But we still appreciate your insight. And Professor Yang, before we delve any further, when talking about the cryptocurrency market, we hear a jargon being thrown around quite frequently. It's the kimchi premium, so to speak. Could you tell us what that is? And also, there's a bit of talk about the plunge in kimchi premium as we speak.
Yes, it's true that the kimchi premium means Korean cryptocurrency, Korean market is relatively more expensive than the same cryptocurrencies in the overseas the marketplaces. Well, major reason for this high kimchi premium is just Koreans love this kind of speculations. So in 1 year, about 3 to 4 years, the kimchi premium even rise up high to 50%. In other words, the price of same cryptocurrencies used to be 50% more expensive, right, in the Korean the marketplaces than in any other overseas market. But nowadays, this premium used to be negative. I mean, even a couple of weeks ago, now is just they're hovering around 0 or 1%. Why is that so? I think one of the major reasons is the strong dollars. Now, the exchange rate between Korean won and the dollar got aggravated by almost 20% in the last 1.5 years. That means unless you earn 20% more through kimchi premium in Korean market, and after you sell out the cryptocurrencies in Korean market and change it to US dollars and transfer it back to the United States, you cannot make sure whether you are making money or not through this transacted cryptocurrencies in Korean marketplaces. So that is one of the critical issue, whether the foreign investors wants to move their money into Korean marketplaces to transact the cryptocurrencies in here. So unless we recover this weak Korean won and the strong dollar problem, and kimchi premium will not be recovered in the Korean marketplaces. I'm not saying the kimchi premium is desirable. What I'm saying is kimchi premium is hardly to be seen in the near future because, again, the interest rate in the American the financial market will hover around pretty high, relatively higher than that of the Korean market. That may observe the overseas the liquidity of monies, so hot monies. So unless the United States lower the interest rate, I mean the financial market in the United States will be more attractive than in Korea. So that is a major reason why these hot monies will never try to get back to the United States by selling the cryptocurrencies in Korean market. So kimchi premium is hardly recovered in the very near future. That's my expectation.
Right, I see. And as Professor Yang mentioned, Sam, concerns have been raised about the weakening Korean won against the US dollar. What is the latest on that front?
Well, last time I checked, it was hovering just under 1,400 won per dollar, which is pretty elevated compared to what we've been seeing over the last decade. Yeah, I mean, also, sorry for continuing to refer back to the Trump trades, but a lot of money going into the U.S., meaning people are just buying dollars, shedding local currencies. And the won weakening has been part of the phenomenon. So a lot of policymakers that I get to meet kind of want to downplay how serious this is. Although they do understand that it's a serious issue, it's not only the Korean one that's suffering right now. It's pretty much every other non-U.S. currency that's weakening. So, but what people are feeling positive about is that Korea happens to have one of the biggest U.S. dollar reserves in the world. As far as I remember, it might rank 8th or 9th. So they have the wherewithal or the firepower or ammunition to step in to make sure that the won doesn't weaken further. But policymakers are always very discreet when they step in. And they will step in when it gets worse enough so that it starts to impact the import prices of things that Korea buys, from food to energy, because that would mean weaker currency raising the prices of things that people buy here, which certainly is not good for the economy.
Right. And policymakers here, they are preparing, of course, for a shift in U.S. leadership. And that being said, what aspects of Korea's efforts to better prepare for a second Trump administration have been garnering attention within the foreign media?
Well, some of my sources have told me that part of the contingency plans that the South Koreans have with Trump in office would be considering whether they would buy more U.S. energy. That is because one of the things that Donald Trump is quite upset with is the fact that a lot of these countries have huge trade surpluses, which is actually not a good thing for the U.S. in his view. So in order for South Korea to make sure that it doesn't get too high on the radar for Trump, they need to reduce their trade deficit with the U.S. so as to maybe possibly drop out of the top 10 nation list that I just told you about. And one way to do that effectively would be to buy U.S. gas, energy, oil, so that it would also benefit the industries here as well, reduce the deficit with the U.S., makes it easier for Korean negotiators to go to the table with U.S. policymakers and say, hey, that's what we're doing. Our deficit is sort of shortening, narrowing, and we're investing a lot as well. We had an interview with the finance minister last month, and then where he said, we're going to continue to put investment in the U.S., meaning we're going to be part of the force driving hiring there. So they're trying to take this into an opportunity from sort of a crisis right now. Yeah.
Right. So buying U.S. gas, of course, is something that Europe is also thinking about doing, especially with the situation with Russia in Ukraine, of course. All right. I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Sam, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. And Professor Yang, as always, thank you very much for your insights today.
Thank you.
Right. Well, on that note, we end this edition of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow.
K-drama, the charm of Korea that captivates the world. Love like a K-drama. A story of us where hope and despair coexist. Fun and refreshingly satisfying. K-dramas carry warmth and move people's hearts. Meet the fascinating stories of Korea through K-dramas.